Hello, we're back.
Back. Better than ever.
Better than ever.
Yeah.
We were just both complaining about LinkedIn feeling a little bit, for me, feeling boring lately, and for you, well, for both of us, I think, just no rhyme or rhythm in terms of what is of interest to people, what's going to get picked up, what the algorithm is going to like. So
Right.
we're jumping into this podcast off of a little bitch sesh
Yeah.
about
Feeling.
our platform of choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, I think the comment section is the place to exist right now. And
Yeah.
also DMs. Like I'm having
Yeah.
great conversations with people behind the
That's
scenes.
good. I don't do a lot of that. Maybe I need to slide into the DMs, as the kids
That's
say.
right. I think this might be a little different. I'll ask my kids if they'll be like, "No, mom, don't slide into anybody's DMs." But yeah, no, there's some I think people are craving real connection. And maybe that's why we're all feeling like you just expressed of like, the content out there is not doing it for us. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, it's a good week if you're a Swiftie, but I'm
Mm,
very much an admirer of her, but very much not a Swiftie, and so I'm like, great for them. Cool. That's nice.
right.
And then
And
I'm over my comments.
so many more people should have that
Yeah.
attitude, I think. Like not
Maybe.
my
I don't know.
circus, not my monkeys, just
Yeah.
good, two people happy. That's great. Yeah. It's fascinating. It is
Yeah.
fascinating to watch all the brands doing all the things and all the other brands commenting on all the things that they're doing, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're feeling too much of on LinkedIn right now. It's just that endless news cycle or something.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I've it's I'm needing a
You need a,
re-injection of excitement and
or maybe a
passion
Labor
about
Day, maybe a long weekend
maybe
that's coming
that's a good
up.
idea. How
By the
convenient.
time people hear this, we will have had that,
Yes.
but let's pretend we're all well rested from Labor
We're
Day.
well rested, feeling motivated. So, we're going to jump into a conversation today that we've for sure talked about before because it's a good topic, but I think we still have lots to say about it. And we asked for input on conversation points. And my former colleague and buddy, Phil Gomes, who I worked with at Edelman, and just I want to take a moment to shout out Phil Gomes because he was one of, he kind of inspired me. He has always been so passionate about ethics in the
Mm,
social media space, even before social media was really a thing, and just the importance of disclosure, not just as an influencer, but even as someone working at an agency who's talking about a client or
okay.
just what's appropriate online. He created a whole internet kind of social media training, really a social media training class with multiple modules and a whole system for Edelman that was used globally.
Love that.
He's just an awesome guy, and I very much admire how passionate he is about doing the right thing
We need more of
online.
that.
So
Yep.
just shout out to Phil Gomes for that because it's been very inspirational to me and is a big piece of why I am so passionate about proper disclosure and get so upset when I don't see it.
And don't you love that? Because that's
Yeah.
exactly right. We need these epicenters of advocacy, stewardship, moral compass, because it does positively impact those around us. You're an example of that. Like, oh, this feels good. This is right. I'm going to also embrace. So, yay to both of you for doing that because we need it in this industry. We
Yeah,
definitely
it's just
do.
important. Honesty, I usually can't go wrong.
Right. That'll be
Well,
next week's
oh,
episode
that's next
when
week's debate.
honesty is the wrong choice.
What Phil wanted to talk about was really what it was is ambassadorships. I'll read his exact question. Something on what long-term relationships in this space look like rather than the more transactional product launch shapes. In our world, we typically call that ambassadors, which
Mm,
is when there's a longer term relationship between the brand and the influencer, where there's multiple posts. There's really a relationship there. And it's not just like, hey, we have this launch coming out. Can you talk about this one time and then go away? And I find this a very interesting topic because I think if you said to anyone, which is better, should someone write about something talk about something once and it's just a one and done? Or is it better for someone to talk about this product multiple times over the course of a year or even more and really show a relationship, I mean, I think it would be overwhelming, the people voting in favor of that ambassadorship model. But what I would like to say is that, yes, that sounds way better in practice. And if this were a perfect world and if life didn't get in the way, sure, that would be great. But I've seen so many instances of ambassadorships gone bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
guess what I want to say is, yeah, I think it's great. I think it's something to aspire to. I think sometimes it is the solution, but I do not think it's as simple as do we do ambassadors or do we do one-offs, because there is a lot to think about when it comes to ambassadorships that might not be obvious from the surface. And so I thought it could be kind of fun to talk
Yeah.
about. I know it's always kind of fun to talk about things going into the shitter, but like the way that it can go bad.
Well, let me work backwards from what you just said. And I may be mishearing this, but you said you do think it could be the solution to
I
what?
think
The solution
sometimes
to
it's
what?
great. I don't know. Solution might have been the wrong word, if that's what I actually said. I guess
Like it can be a good choice.
it can be a good choice for a
Right.
brand. I once did I think you were there actually. It was the weekend of the week of our meet cute. I gave a talk at an A&A conference with my client Christina about when to choose ambassadorships and how to make them successful. And like there are times where it makes sense. The brand that she was working for at the time, Ergo Baby, it makes sense for Ergo Baby. They have multiple products. They have different products for different stages of a baby's life. They have products that are even for pregnant moms. So, starting with a mom when she's pregnant and then showing the different Ergo Baby products after the baby's born, and then the baby starts to walk and you're moving into a stroller and they have a bouncy seat. So that's one thing with an ambassadorship. It's helpful to have multiple products so you're not talking about the same exact thing over and over again. It's helpful to have just multiple touch points in someone's life so there's different stories to tell, or even
Right.
seasonality. Like we see
Yeah.
this a lot with food clients. I've said this before, we do a ton of work with dairy. In January, it's all about new year, new you, and fitting dairy into a healthy diet when you're trying to be healthy. And then in the spring, we often talk about sustainability because that's when Earth Day is coming around. And then in the summer, it's kind of like dairy on the go and,
Right.
that sort of
Ice
thing. And then
cream.
back ice cream,
Yeah.
cream. July is National Ice Cream Month, and
Right.
then back to school in the fall and
Well,
tailgating, and then holiday.
you're pointing out that there are criteria that make it the right choice. It is not just a guess or a mystery. There needs to be a growth path or a journey for that ambassador and that content. So it's not Groundhog Day of 12 months of the same post over and over and over.
Over and over again.
And do you have recommendations? When you say ambassador, I think I've heard you say in the past, we're talking 6 to 12 months at a minimum. Like that's what ambassador looks like. Do you agree, or is it?
I think at least, yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, I think otherwise you're really, if it's just 2 to 3 months, I think you're talking just about a series of posts.
Yeah,
That's not really,
that's
I
a
mean,
different.
to me, an ambassador really speaks to some kind of deeper, longer term relationship.
And there's the other point that it allows for a deeper dive into that influencer pulling back the curtain on their life through this product brand sponsorship, or a deeper story evolving again versus the same surface level, maybe touch 12 times, just
Yeah.
which is also not terrible. But then why not use 12 different people or 4 different people 3 different times?
I mean,
Like there's
there's
ways
different,
to slice it
well,
up.
and so let's talk about, I can tell you some of the reasons that our clients ask for ambassadorship programs, and also kind of talk about how it's maybe gone wrong in those instances. We have clients who really, what sounds great to them about an ambassadorship is, one, it helps them, like, from a brand perspective, they feel like, wow, this person really does care about my brand. They want to enter into a long-term relationship with us. We truly are a part of their life, and we want to get to know them, and we want to form a relationship with them. And sure, Sway, we're using you to help facilitate all of it, but how nice that there's this smaller group of people who we're going to work with throughout the course of a year, and we can actually form a relationship with them and share about our brand and get to know them and get their ideas for what we should do together and brainstorm. And I think there's this kind of rose-colored glasses perspective of what that looks like. And again, I say, like, yes, looking at that in a vacuum, that sounds amazing.
Right. Very powerful, very strategic.
But I can say that we have seen drawbacks to that, especially when you're dealing with influencers who have management companies. So we've run into a situation where we have a group of ambassadors. Our client, we were working on a campaign once. We brought a group of ambassadors together, all different sizes, all different types of content. It was amazing. Everyone got to know each other. There were so many things that were amazing about this gathering. One of the things that was less amazing about this gathering is when late at night, all of the influencers got together without any of the brand or agency people there, and very obvious to me, shared what they were being paid with each other. And started comparing notes about their contracts, which led to nearly all of them coming back and asking for 2 to 3 times what they had already agreed to.
No.
For content.
So predictable, though. Like, you almost could forecast that.
So that's one thing that can happen. And then with the ones who have management representation with managers, and I don't want to turn this into like a let's shit on managers situation, because we all know there are some great ones.
Let me cross that off my list.
There are great ones out there.
Right.
But listen, their job is to make as much money as possible for the creators they're representing and for themselves. And one thing that anyone in any kind of like place of negotiation is going to take advantage of, if you suddenly have 2 people who you can play off of each other, there's a chance to make more money for your client. So what happened in this instance with the influencers who had representation is that they were like, oh, this brand wants to have a relationship with this influencer. I'm going to talk to the brand, and then I'm going to go back to Sway Group and tell them, like, so they were meeting with us separately and trying to, they were like, oh, well, if I can have this relationship with the brand directly and cut Sway Group out of the equation, that's more money for us. That's more money for me. That's more money for my client. There was a lot of like back channeling, attempts at back channeling happening.
Yeah. And P.S., go back to our previous episode about pricing problems. This is one of those pricing pressures that has to be factored in. I'm not going to open that can of worms, but what we're dealing with on the agency side is this constant sensitive, delicate balance between all parties.
Yeah. So it's just tricky, and we dealt with it, and everything is ended up fine in the end. That's another, like, so like, sounds great. The client should get to know this influencer and their management company. Like, okay, but there's drawbacks to that. Like, sounds great. We'll get everyone together in person because getting together in person is amazing. True. It totally is. But you know, when they're in their 20s and staying up 3 hours later than you, drinking at the hotel bar, what's going to go down?
There's so much that becomes out of your control. We've had that happen recently. One of our touch points in a campaign is, because most things these days aren't in person. And to your point in previous conversations we've had, brands do want to have some semblance of confidence that they are creating relationships, and part of that, and quote unquote, owning those relationships. So one of our touch points is a Q&A with the brand, whoever they want to bring into that Q&A, and the influencer team. And we record it so that anybody that can't make it can benefit from that Q&A. We love it. The brands love it because they really feel like they're getting that meaty connection and engagement and relationship building and humanizing the whole thing. And then we've had instances where even in a Zoom meeting, that conversation sort of starts, or an influencer starts pitching new ideas to the brand. which is not a problem for us, but we want to handle that in a different space, not in
Right.
something that's informing the program and
Right.
about team building for that program because of all the downstream impact. Like you said, it could other people just on the call who weren't thinking about that or who aren't maybe as extroverted or weren't on the call and are watching it later are like, oh, shit, I missed my opportunity. I didn't know this was a pitch fest, right? And it undercuts the whole point of that relationship building. And I want to go back and just state my case for talent managers' job being to cut the best deal, make the most money for their clients. Yes, and one way to sabotage that is to do what you described,
Yeah.
because the long-term impact of that relationship being undermined is much greater than the, $1,000 more or they saved or pocketed or something. So yes, I think that's true. And maybe green talent managers are still doing that. And those folks who've been around the business long enough to know relationships are currency would not do that. So word to the wise, I hope people don't think that that's a good idea.
And I wish for these managers' sakes that they could fall back on the fact that they were green, but these were not. These were just sleazy.
Not green, just sleazy. Name of my next album.
Yeah. Something else we have seen happen with ambassador programs, and this is not going to happen with every client, but it's just something to be aware of if you're this type of person. We had a client who was very excited about setting up an ambassador program for a full calendar year. We selected, I believe it was 5 ambassadors to be part of this program. We came up with, I think they were doing monthly posts. So we came up with just kind of a general cadence looking at like product launches, stuff that was going on, key moments in time, calendar moments, all the things. They each had their own, and it wasn't the same for each of the 5, but we had an annual plan for each of these 5 ambassadors to take advantage of who they are, what they talk about, and how they kind of are relevant to the brand. This brand, the clients were all on the young side and like moved very quickly, and everything was very dynamic and shiny and new. And what do you think happened when we hit June? They were tired to death of all of them. They were so over all 5 of the ambassadors. And thank goodness we built into our contracts a termination
An out clause.
An out clause, and we were able to cut ties and move on. But yeah, like what sounded really bright and shiny and amazing in December, and like ambassadors, that's so great, that's so sexy, that's what everyone's saying that we should do, this is amazing. At the end of the day, that's not who this client is. And they were like, oh my God, I'm so tired of the way she talks. I'm like so over this content. This is so boring. She's saying,
my goodness,
like, I know it's a 2 different products, but it's like exactly the same as the last one. I hate it. Please get rid of her.
Right. And my advice based on just what you're sharing, and we've experienced similar, is you're pointing. So this is for brand side that think that long-term is, and it's how we frame it, right? Like when you say we're going to do long-term partnerships, ambassadorships, build advocacy, hit seasonal high points. Nobody describes the long-term partnership as fatigue will set in and tedium will reign and you'll get tired. Like we just don't pitch it to ourselves like that. So you're really pulling back the curtain on the balance of reality that has to be part of that discussion. Where was I going with this? As internal teams or agencies are doing this, it is not necessarily cost effective. It is not necessarily like, I think there are, pause. Here's what I was thinking, and I lost my train of thought. You described the impetus, the motivation for going into this from a very emotional standpoint. We will feel like an brand team or an agency team, not your team, but like those people who really lean into it. We will feel confident that we're building community, that we're owning these relationships, that all of these things we've been pressured to incorporate into our influencer strategy are now part of the package. And that's always, in my mind, something that needs to be addressed in strategizing is what's driving this decision, because it's rarely, this is the best thing for the program. It's often, this is the best thing for the person in the room who is making decisions on a limited experience with this or a shiny rose-colored glasses view of how it's going to turn out. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's never as simple as, do we want one-offs or do we want long-term? There's
Right.
a
Well,
boatload of decisions
and
that go in
just
there.
it's fun to make fun of this client for like getting tired of these people midway through
It's so
the year.
human.
Right.
Yeah.
But there also can be very logical, data driven reasons for wanting to cut ties with an ambassador. So there was another ambassador we were working with on a campaign, and when we looked at the performance of her content, it was tanking, and the cost per view on her content, even with our paid behind it, was so much higher than any of the other ambassadors. Like this content was just not resonating with her audience. There was a piece of content that she did initially, which was why she was pulled in as an ambassador, and that piece of content did well, but we learned that was an anomaly. That was just this one little moment in time where it resonated, and something about, like, kind of like what you and I were talking with the LinkedIn algorithm. Like,
Yeah.
you don't
What
know.
kaflooey.
Sometimes this crazy post can just resonate for whatever reason. But for her, like, that was not indicative of her audience's hunger for this type of content. It was a one-off. And once we realized that, like, the data made it very clear that we had to cut ties. And so that wasn't this emotional, like, I'm bored of her type of a thing. It was like, I
Wasn't
am looking at these
reactive.
numbers, and financially this does not make sense
Right.
for us.
And there's a difference between, are you building an evergreen, always on influencer strategy, and are you then using the tactic of long-term partnerships, ambassadorships to fuel that? So those two are different. And you're making the case, in my mind, and really everybody at this point, every brand should have an always on evergreen approach, so that as a team, as a system, an organization, as a strategy, you've got the roadmap for what the next 6, 12, 18 months could look like.
What about,
and then build on that.
Let's talk about clients. We have some clients who, for budget reasons or just because of how their calendar works, they do one program a year based on a key moment in time. So it could be an insurance company doing open enrollment. It could be a university pushing at application time. It could be
Product launch.
a product launch. Maybe they just do one product launch a year, or it could be a company where they make all of their money just in that, like, we've talked to some baking products where, 80% of their sales happen in Q4. So that's where they want to put their spend. So there are clients who, for whatever reason, do one push a year. When an evergreen always on doesn't necessarily make sense for them. An ambassadorship, in the typical way of thinking about it, also on the face of it wouldn't necessarily make sense for them, because there's not posting that's happening throughout a 6-month or 1-year period. But what's interesting, we have a number of these clients, and what's interesting is they love using some of the same people from year to year. So maybe it has been 12 months since they posted before, but that content really resonated. They loved it. And there's another story for them to tell in 2025 that's different from what they shared in 2024. And it performed really well. So that's like, I don't know if you would call that an ambassador, but we're always like, I think part of what kind of hangs me up on this is that, like, we're trying to force this into a definition, and this is what this thing is. Like, maybe it's just as simple as be open to working with people multiple times, and you don't have to call it anything. But, like, maybe it makes sense.
But so many players out there want to call it long term because they think they're going to negotiate better rates, or they're going to get better loyalty, you've said this before, we negotiated a 3 post package, and by post number 2 they came back and said, I want 4 times as much for this next.
Are you seeing, like, we used to be able to get great rates if you bought like 3 at once or 4 at once. Now, because the production on social media posts has gotten so extensive, like, I think that's why, like, we're actually there's not really truly economies of scale in purchasing multiple posts at a time from creators. Where we see the benefit, though, if you can commit at the beginning of the year to multiple posts, you can lock in that rate. And so if their rate goes
Yeah.
up, you can be grandfathered in to a lower rate because you committed ahead of time. So there's
Yeah.
a benefit there. But I'm
There is,
seeing,
but to your point, they know that's why they're not doing that as much, because they know they
yeah.
have to some degree carte blanche. It's Q4, I'm booked. I'm going to, in February, I already know I'm going to be booked in Q4. So I'm already planning to
But
raise
I
my
think you're going
rates.
to pay less on a Q4 post if you commit to it in February versus October.
Agreed. And I think the reality bears out. The best laid plans turn into somebody in October going, by the way, I'm not doing your post for that much because I just got double my rate.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that termination clause goes both ways.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, I do think brands who have a cadence of more of a surgical strike, a holiday, a seasonal event, a launch, a one time thing, absolutely still need an always on. Can you imagine? Because this was back in the day. Do you remember when agencies would come to us with their client and it's like all they're doing is this one? It's called launch, launch, abandon. And then they all go their separate ways. And you're like, what? And then a year later, they're like, oh, we forgot. We need to a back to school thing again. If they have an always on thought process around this,
Thought process. Yeah. It doesn't always on
monthly
doesn't have to
meetings.
mean always on posts.
Right, exactly. It's not the
Yeah.
content is going live, but somebody should be in charge owning the influencer strategy. And yes, building it year over year. If that's it's dollar cost averaging. If it's once a year, fine. If it's once a month, fine. But you need to have that consistency and you'll find efficiencies of scale, I think, in there as well. You'll find places throughout your calendar year to use that content again, or the learnings from it across your PR or your website language or your trade show presence. There's no reason for it to just live in the 4 months of the intensity of a campaign. And, I just saw an article in DigiDay, I think, about Blue Apron bringing all of their influencer in-house again. And I just want to touch on this sort of fallacy. One of the reasons they stated was that they wanted to own those relationships and cut costs. I'm like, there is no world in which you and your team owning those relationships is less expensive or time consuming. It's actually a big investment to do it right because you've noted some places where it can all go wrong. And a brand needs to remember it is no longer now about discovery, negotiating, and contracting. Now it's totally separate. It's community building. It's paying attention to them when you're bored of them, paying attention to them when the shit hits the fan and your brand is under fire and the ad agency did something wrong that you as the influencer person didn't know was happening, and healing those relationships, repairing those. It is expensive to own relationships with influencers. It's worth it, but there's a cost there. So whether it's your agency handling it or you're bringing it in-house, the always on, the long-term partnerships or the long-term thinking about it requires exquisite care. I think,
okay, I'm going to nominate this for our conversation next week because I have so much more to say about this, but we're
yeah,
at time. So, but we're always kind of desperate for ideas on what to talk about. So next week, what I would like to talk about is just kind of analyzing why agencies can be helpful to work with, like the benefits that brands can see. It'll be a very self-serving, like they used to say in the 80s, a very special episode. This will be a very self-serving episode.
The more you know.
This Way podcast, just talking about some of the reasons that agencies can be helpful that might not be so obvious to brands at the outset.
I think that would be brilliant and helpful. And maybe what we can do in between now and then is put the bat signal out and have folks chat with us about what that looks like on their end or what questions they have, and then bring that to the table too.
Based on the LinkedIn algorithm, maybe we need to hire a white guy to post about it so that we get
in a rage baiting sort of fashion, and then link or put comment below and we'll get you something. I don't know what we'll do.
Maybe this will be my moment to use an AI avatar to post something.
All right. Go, girl. I'd love to see that.
I'm going to make a guy in a quarter zip pullover.
With like a day old beard or maybe like a little shadow. Ball cap or no ball cap?
No ball cap, but his name's Brad. And he is going to pose this question.
Nice. Yes. Okay. Let's see how Brad does with this.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
Well,
See
this
you
was
next
great.
week.
See you
Bye.
then. Bye.